We now proceed to our keynote address. As you're aware, GSTN has been one of the largest economic reform agenda of government and probably one of the largest technology-led transformation India has ever undertaken. It's going to be live exactly a week from now, and we have also a special midnight session of Parliament for GSTN rollout. A keynote from GSTN CISO on their rollout and security preparedness is something all of us are eagerly waiting. May I request Mr. Anand Pandey, CISO GSTN, to share his view on GST rollout and security preparedness. Mr. Anand Pandey on the stage, please. The stage is yours.
Good morning, all. We all are aware that GST is getting rolled out on 1st July officially by Government of India, and we are working towards meeting the deadline, and last minute checks are in process. So today's session is mostly focused around what is GST, what is GSTN is all about, and the security, data security and privacy measures which we have planned throughout the development and implementation and other phases of the GST application rollout. So, few key things about GSTN. So, GSTN is a special purpose vehicle created for developing the application and implementing the IT infrastructure associated with it. It's a private limited company by constitution. But even if it is private, the government has full control on GSTN. Few key parameters about the GST application. So we have around 7 to 8 million taxpayers, and we are hoping approximately 3.2 billion invoices per month, B2B invoices. So GSTN is equipped with the task to create strong IT infrastructure, and with the flexibility of hiring professionals from private and government sector. So this is our IT strategy. So left-hand side, which you see, is mostly prepared by the GSTN and consumed by taxpayers. The right-hand side would be mostly consumed by the tax officials. For taxpayers, we are preparing a platform to provide core services such as registration, returns, and payments. There would be help-based support for taxpayers and tax officials, both. The back-end activities, there would be, say, assessment, refund, and all that. We are preparing module. We are also developing some part for the Model 2 states, and Model 1 states will have their own systems to perform all these activities. And both the back end and front end would be interacting with GST application. This is a typical workflow. So again, divided into two parts, left hand and right hand side. So from left hand side, taxpayers would be coming via GST portal or through the other interfaces such as GSPs or GST Suvidha Provider and ASPs, and hitting to the core GST application through APIs. And same for the tax officials as well. They can come through the centralized portal and hitting to the application. Let's now see the key security principles while designing such a large and complex application. While designing the GST application, few key principles were defined and adhered to. So most of the principles are very common, such as scalability, security, privacy, availability, and all that. But the unique features which I feel are the first is the platform approach. Second is no vendor locking, because the core part of application is developed using the open source components, and we absolutely don't have any dependency on the OEMs. And third and key, another key design principle is reconstruction of truth. So at any given point of time, though the whatever data we are receiving, it is stored in JSON across multiple sharded databases, but the original data and invoices can be reconstructed using the whatever data was submitted by the taxpayer. So this is reconstruction of truth. So GST application, as you are aware, it would be a game changer, looking at it perceived as a game changer application, and we feel that it will be one of the most you can say attracted application by the cyber security attackers and hacking community. So we are sure that it would be attacked. So in November, for example, when we went live with enrollment, where we were onboarding the existing taxpayers, the day application was launched, we saw many attacks, but those attacks we could contain, and there was absolutely nil material impact. So even for the next rollout, we are prepared, and we are sure that we would be able to contain those attacks. While these are the risks which we perceive, there are few key risk mitigating principles which we are adhering to. So the core system, GST system, it will not be exposed to internet directly. It would be again interacting through the APIs with any transaction. So we have adopted multi-layer or layered security approach. The access control would be again a role-based access control on need to know, need to do basis. This is a known principle which any security professional would follow. Any data transfer which would be happening to GST system, it would be through secure channels, and the data would be at all time encrypted. There is a dedicated monitoring center, say NOC and SOC, which would be continuously 24/7 looking at the system availability, performance, utilization, the security alerts through different centers. And of course, all these things are periodically audited and reviewed. So now I'll take you through various stages of the GST application, right from designing to implementation. What the approaches we have taken or ensured to ensure the security of the system, at the same time the security of the data we are collecting. So at the initial beginning phase, when the RFP was rolled out and we were selecting the products to or few tools to develop the system, because the GST system is mostly developed using the open source components. So all those components were picked and choose after the thorough scanning, identifying the security, licensing or operational risks, created a centralized database, and from that database only the softwares are selected. It's not like because only it is available on the internet, it's open source, anything can be used. So that control is already there. We have a able partner, Infosys, which CMMI and all other known certifications are there, and we are adhering to those processes also. Our entire application is deployed in 2 data centers supported by the near data centers to ensure zero data loss and high availability. So the data centers are in Bangalore and Delhi, which are supported by near data centers to as a data backup. All those data centers are tier 3 data centers, and the physical security controls such as CCTV, building security controls, access controls, and all those controls are already implemented. The access to caged environment where the where the GST application infrastructure is hosted, it's a combination of biometric plus beige access with anti-pass enabled, so that only the identified individuals for the business activities, only they can enter in the specific area. On the IT infrastructure security, GST system is, anyway, it's a caged area, 4 data centers we have seen. DCs are operating currently in functionally active mode. So both the data centers are active. It's not a typical DC and DR center, but those are functionally active. At any given point in time, data center are designed in such a way that it can take load of the other data center in case of any adverse incident happening at one data center. Resiliencies are ensure that all the levels, all the layers, right from network systems and the links, we are following for security the ISO standards. So as per RFP, the entire application will be certified against ISO 27000, 20000 and 22301. In addition to that, we are referring to GOI guidelines, RBI guidelines as a best practice. Internally, the network is segregated in various zones based on the functionality and the criticality of the information it is handling. We are using some latest technologies such as PIM, PAM, anti-APT, all those standard security devices and appliances are already deployed. So on the links, WAN links, we are taking the clean pipe from the ISPs, but internally we have deployed DDoS devices at the perimeter of the network. On application security, we are following SDLC, and we have seen core system is not exposed directly to internet, and it is interacting through API. Role-based access is there. There are various roles because the system would be utilized by the tax officers, taxpayers, Suvidha providers, other government agencies. So all those roles are created and accesses are provisioned. On data security part, based on the standards which we are following and the industry best practices we are referring, the encryption is ensured. The database is sharded, so into smaller and faster manageable parts, so that the access as well as retrieval would be very fast. Database is encrypted, and on the database side, the DAM is implemented, which would continuously monitor and capture the database activities. And again, it will be monitored by a dedicated SOC. The entire GST system would be interacting through API. So API is one of the most critical component. So APIs, again, the access is restricted on need to know, need to do basis. We have already shared few APIs with the concerned parties, and it is authenticated using user ID, password, and a token. So all those these controls are implemented, but there should be a strict monitoring to know the legitimate and illegitimate traffic to ensure security of the system. So we have a dedicated SOC which would be operational through Chennai on 24/7 by 365 basis. It would be monitoring the any information which is going in and or flowing in and out of the GST application. In addition to that, there is a dedicated NOC which is operating from Delhi, they would be morely focusing on availability and performance parameters of the IT infrastructure. All other policies and associated procedures are already ready, and we are, right now these two things are functional. But in addition to the primary SOC, which is provisioned by our MSP or our channel partner, we are going ahead with another set of eyes, and we call it as Security Monitoring and Analytics Center. So currently we are working on the scope of the SMAC, which would mostly be focusing around cybersecurity, analytics, and forensics parts. So a draft RFP is already, we have provided on our website, and we have received quite good response from the industry. So currently we are going through it, and we would be again coming up with the final RFP. So about now, say we have seen how the system components are selected, security controls on high level are designed and implemented. So this is the governance framework around it. So we have defined the governance, our overall information security governance framework in line with the applicable standards. We do periodic code scanning with the OWASP top 10, SANS 25, and all that. Supported by static and dynamic analysis of all the third-party components. Normal VAPT, it is done by the Infosys on periodic intervals by GST, and also on the top of it, we have engaged STQC as our auditing partner since inception, since beginning of the project. So they are also auditing and reviewing whatever work is being done at various stages. At the same time, the entire security architecture and the controls are reviewed by a security advisory board independently, and they are kind of guide to us. They review the whatever security controls or solutions we are currently deploying, and they advise us on the enhancements. And that security advisory board is chaired by Dr. Gulshan Rai, and there are other dignitaries from the industry. So when I say layered security access, so this is the schematic of GST system. So there are the stakeholders as taxpayers, tax officers, banks, government officials, and GSPs. So GSPs would be coming directly through API channel. Others, they have option to come through website as well as through APIs. This is near the schematic, indicative schematic of the network. If you see the resiliencies at the internet service providers and various zones which are there, which are segregated by firewall and other security equipments, there is a sandboxing environment also to analyze the threats and malwares before actual packet reaches to the core system. So there are two paths. One is MPLS, and other is the internet, which will hit to the GST system. Okay, this is our information security framework, which is, say, as we have seen that as per RFP and the contract, ISO 20027 and 22301 are applicable. So we are, instead of handling these certificates or certifications independently, we are taking the IMS approach, so integrated management system. We are attempting it for the first time, this particular combination. IMS is available normally, say, in combination of 20,000, 27, and some quality or environmental standards, but not with BCP, and this combination, at least I have not seen. It covers the security part at all the layers and applicable to all the stakeholders which are interacting with GST system. So current status, while we are discussing, the last minute checks are going on, and we are fully prepared to roll out the GST. So just a quick update on the current status. Out of 3 main functions such as registration and enrollment, it was started on 8th of November 2016. Almost 81% of taxpayers have already enrolled, and we are again opening the registration and enrollment on 25th. The IT infrastructure is already implemented and it's operational. Help desk is already ready and operational. Help desk will be supporting the taxpayers and tax officers across India. GST application is deployed. We are currently in last phase of doing last minute checks, so it's in progress. The security testing is completed, security testing in terms of VAPT, application security, and all those are completed. Audit by STQC will be completed before go live, that is 1st of July. Formal go live is on 1st of July. So on 25th of June, GST registration again will be opened for taxpayers for enrollment. And on 1st of July, Government of India, or 30th, Government of India is planning to officially launching the GST application. So while return filing, which is part of this rollout, is little delayed, upload of invoice data will start from 1st of July itself. Okay, this is, I'm at the end of my presentation. If you have any queries, I'm sure you will have queries. So you can shoot me at anand.pandey@gstn.org.in, and wish you all the best. And thanks DSCI and partners for giving us an opportunity to discuss the GST rollout and security considerations in the system. Thank you.
We now move to our second keynote session. I would like to invite Mr. Sanjeev Malhotra, CEO, NASSCOM METI Center of Excellence, IoT. He is going to share insight on India's story of industrialization 4.0. Mr. Sanjeev Malhotra.
Presentation to load up. So things are changing for sure. Last presentation was a proof of how things are changing, how digital India is becoming a reality. And some of these programs that I interact with, I've interacted in past with Aadhaar and now GST, definitely the examples of how things are changing. Overall in the country and across the globe, of course, things are changing in much different way. And that's the topic for today, Internet of Things. That's what I cover. And when I talk about Internet of Things, basically humans have already changed, and now we are talking of things. And when we say things, when they start connecting and they start talking to each other, the complexity levels are going to be far different than what we have seen in the past. And that's what I'm going to be covering, some of those aspects of it in today's presentation. And are you having difficulty with that? So, given the importance of how IoT is not a technology, IoT is not a science, IoT is a confluence of technologies which is going to bring about a change in every aspect of our life, every aspect of our industry, whether we are talking of manufacturing or we are talking transportation or we are talking at a consumer level, everything is going to change, and it's going to change over a period of next few years, and the process has already begun. And that's why this Center of Excellence was established, which is a partnership between Government of India and the industry, supported by Government of Karnataka, to be a catalyst for this change. Change is anyway going to happen, and how do we make it happen in 5 years instead of 10 to 15 years, which naturally, rather than going through a natural progression, let's make it faster. And that's what the Center of Excellence was set up a couple of years ago and now it's been in operation for more than a year, based in Bangalore. And I'll spend next 20 minutes, talking about what are the trends that we have seen. Some of that will be the research that has been done in the industry, and some of it will be some of the experiences that I see on the ground level in India, the changes that are actually happening both in the industry at the government level. So, talking of IoT, as I just explained, the benefits are going to extend across the industry. The things that are making it happen are basically adoption of some of the IPv6 on the internet protocol side of things, reduction of cost, higher or easy availability of communication. These are the things which are accelerating the adoption of these things. Things that are slowing things down. Why it is not happening as fast as it could is some of the security issues, some of the interoperability issues. Still, on the network sides, there are a few more things that need to be done in terms of, on the near field communications and how do we connect it to the cloud. Some of the issues still need to be resolved on that. If you again see, security becomes a very important reason for some of the fears in the minds of the people, who are in the, whether it's in the industry or in the retail or in the finance side of things. These are the fears that I hear from the people, and that need to be addressed. No answers have emerged. Some of the standards, standards of course address the security part of it, having a global common acceptance of those standards is also important. We have many of such standards being developed across the world. Germany would be developing their own 4.0, US has got its own, India is yet to start, and while we align with some of those things, but then, there are some of being developed in Japan. How do we all have a common standard so the devices can interoperate? And the problem a few years was the use case or business models. That's no longer the case. Things have changed there. The business cases, the use models are already arrived. Probably last year or 2 years ago, people were asking more, what do I do with this IoT? How do I bring it into my business? That has changed. People have already started asking me or our organization, how do I have a problem to solve? Tell me a solution, give me a solution. ROIs are clearly understood, and some of the data access models are also becoming easier and more prevalent and easy to adopt. Again, privacy issues and some of the price points are coming down, and that's making things much easier. So advantages are clearly well laid out, whether it's on the consumer side of things or on the industry side of things. Consumers can clearly see some of the differentiated products and services. And on an industry side, they can clearly see some of the cost reductions and the control they get by adopting these technologies. Right now, a lot of people in the industry do not know what is the uptime for their machines. If we talk of a manufacturing setup, a lot of them will not be able to tell which of my machines have been up and how many of them have been down over the last 1 month. It's all based on some data which is written on register by some operator sitting on the floor. But then whether you trust that data or how much of that, is there a pattern among those downtimes or uptimes, nobody knows. I'll just show you the trends, how the markets are growing. We'll not spend too much time on that. As you can just see from just see the arrow where it is going, it is all going up and up. And the process started a couple of years ago, and there's no stopping for it, and the numbers are going to get much bigger going forward. India is also expected to have its gain in this IoT. We'll be adopting this technology in different, whether we talk of smart cities or we talk of manufacturing or we talk of transportation, all of them are going to be or actually started adopting these technologies. And we are talking of 9 billion by 2020. That is not important, numbers are not important, but the trends are important. How the technology is getting adopted across the sectors in India. Earlier, the gaps between what India would do and what rest of the world would do, the gaps would be, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Now the gaps have reduced to 3 years to 4 years. In my opinion, that will further reduce down to 1 to 2 years. That's what we are doing. Rest of the world is also grappling with these problems. The problems we are talking about are no different. I mean, of course, we'll have some unique problems when we talk about driverless cars and so on, but then some of the technological issues are fairly common across the board, whether you're talking here or rest of the world. So these are the different verticals. Where do we see the maximum adoption? Maximum adoption we are seeing is in manufacturing sector and in the auto sector. You can, obviously, we all see these things in the reports. There's a talk of driverless cars, and then there is a talk of electric cars. Change is happening, companies have already started manufacturing these vehicles, whether it is Mahindra's or some, or the Tatas. And interestingly, there are a lot of startups also that have come into this field. It's not just limited to large companies. You'll be surprised to know there are some small companies in Bangalore who are developing cars. Surprisingly. I would thought for developing a car, you have to be a large organization, funded billions of dollars. That is not true. Complexities in electric car are far less than developing a car with an internal combustion engine. So as a result, some of the smaller people can also get into it. So I'll actually, explain some of these cases, in the manufacturing side of things, what people can do and where the adoption is. Since manufacturing, because there are too many sectors to cover, but I'll just cover a couple of them just to give a flavor of where things are going, what are the use cases where the adoption is happening in India. On the manufacturing side, people were questioning till last year, show me the ROI. That has changed. Nobody's asking for ROI anymore. People are already saying, okay, I want all my machines to be connected. I want to know which machine is down at what time. Then there is a next step to it. I also want to know predictively when my machine is going to be down. Not only when it is down, tell me when it is going to be down. So quite different from what it was. Okay, we have not reached to that predictive level in India yet, but people have started asking for it. But considering that manufacturing is not the strong sector of India, this is an opportunity to actually convert it into a competitive thing for India, where Make in India ties into Make in India program. And using these technologies, we will be able to at least come at par with some of the other leading countries of the world. So supply chain advantages are always there. So there are two levels of connectivity. Okay, I'll cover that in the next slide. But just to give you a flavor of the automotive side of things, the problems, range from, or the change that is coming is ranging from driverless cars on one hand, where all the automation comes and the vehicle collision detection and those systems, to the areas, if the other end of the spectrum, how the insurance has to be dealt. Insurance, when we talk about, why should everybody pay the same insurance? If I drive 5 kilometers and my driver, somebody else, and a friend drives 50 kilometers to work, why should we both pay the same insurance? The risk for me is far less than the person who's driving more. Just one use case, but there are many variants of this. Such kind of technologies have already, insurance companies have started asking. So that is the length and breadth of this thing in the auto. And when we talk of transportation and logistics, that's a different big story altogether. India's the logistic cost is far more than the rest of the world. And then there are other sectors, so these are the two major sectors we're talking about because that's got the largest commercial impact. But then there are people who are doing this, adopting it in agriculture, in energy sector. So agriculture is another interesting sector, where people are actually coming and asking, can you get me a machine to pick up the weeds? So for people to come and ask, in a country where you would have so much population and nobody's ready to pick up weeds, they're asking for robots to pick up the weeds. So that is the range of things that is happening. So let's talk of industrial Internet of Things. What are the technologies required? There are approximately, we can put it as in 4 layers, where actually at the bottom layer are the things which are going to get connected. When they get connected, they have to be communicating and they have to be controlled. And then there are larger platforms where they all converge. All the information is, where they can, when the data comes, you can do some analytics on it. When you do analytics, you can start predicting things. And people are predicting things based on a lot of different parameters. They will say, okay, if there is a sound prediction, there is a vibration prediction. When the machine vibrates, we know after 3 days it is going to stop working. So if I am collecting data on the vibration, I will know that the vibration pattern has changed. Next 3 days it may fail. So it's almost like looking into the future and saying, or back to the future or whatever we call it, that's how the things are going to be. And at a higher level, once you have your factory connected, the machines within the factory are connected, different factories are also going to be connected. Some of the learnings that you do from this factory are going to be applied to other factories also. So some of these large companies have 10 plants, 20 plants running in different parts of the country or world for some of the large multinationals. So that is the largest, the uppermost layer where management can look at the data, sitting in some other country on what is happening in the factory in Malaysia or in India. So let me just give you a little flavor of the use cases that I see, people have come and actually asked us. And these are the use cases we collect from the factories sitting in Peenya in Bangalore or large Tata Steel plant sitting in Jamshedpur. So that's as wide a range because we have created a program called co-creation where we actually ask some of the industries to come and bring their use cases to us and we find a solution to it through some of the startups. Or even some mid-sized companies. A lot of new solutions are being developed. No one cookie-cutter solution is going to solve all the problems. It's not going to be like one SAP that will solve all the things or one Oracle thing database will be for everything. Okay, some of the building blocks will remain the same, but now there are so many customized solutions needed. So as a result, people are reaching out to the community at large, where can I get a solution? I already talked about predictive maintenance. Some of the things are into remote monitoring and diagnostics. People want to track their workers. I will give you a simple example. The one factory person came and said, how do I make sure when workers are going into the construction area, they're wearing hats or the safety hats? So somebody designed a hat. One startup designed the safety hat with the sensors in it. So when person enters, they actually know the hat is sitting on the head or not, or he's wearing the hat or not. So as simple as that to say, or which area the workers are working. Quality. On quality, people say, so far humans are looking at how the quality of a product is going to be. Now I want to replace it with a machine. Machine can tell how the quality is. It can, when it comes out of the assembly line, whether it is meeting the quality standard, it will automatically put it in 2 bins, a high quality or the inferior quality, or reject the ones which are not. So that is the landscape we are talking about. And some of the interactive worker systems, where worker will actually be able to, while he's repairing a machine, he can actually see through AR, VR what are the different components of the whether he's repairing an aeroplane or he's repairing a machine, will be able to get assisted by that AR, VR solution. And some of the larger ones we have seen, something that we get surprised with when we go to steel plant, some of the new problems come up. Some of the sensors that we put in the steel plant actually melt. We didn't know about that. We never saw those things, things can actually melt. The data that is being collected, over there, is quite different, they're asking for the gearboxes to be having remote maintenance or some sensors where the large gearboxes can have predictive maintenance. And the amount of data that will get generated from this, ultimately, what is it all? what is the core of all this? Whatever I'm talking about is ultimately going to come down to data. All that data has to be secured, has to be stored, secured, and then being acted upon. And people are very, one of the problems that we face is whether these companies want to share their data with everyone. When we call other companies to work upon and solve their problems, whether they're ready to share this data, that's some of the issues that are coming up, And of course, all these things, the complexities, when all these people start talking to each other, security is definitely going to be of the paramount concern and all these things. So on the automobile side of things as well, where India is moving is, I've already told you some of those things, and people have actually started developing systems which you will see in the cars in the next couple of years. They will start rolling out. So they are actually becoming a reality. And as I said, a lot of startups are developing these solutions, which is a big surprise, whether it's a collision detection system or it is or automation of your tire pressure right now. So right now you don't know whether you have to look up every day whether my tire has I need to fill air in this or not. What if there is a thing that tells you actually, you need to actually, or you got a flat tire, or you will get a flat tire, something is wrong with it. That thing doesn't exist of today. But these things are all in the making, and they are coming. So with that, I just want to kind of wrap up and tell you, just wanted to give you a flavor of how things are going globally as well as in India. There are lots of things to talk about, but just to tell you that the whole ecosystem is all coming together in India, right? From governments have changed. The supports we get from the government is extraordinary, both at the state level as well as at the center. Everybody is pushing hard for newer things, whether it is in the payment domain or it is in the new technologies domain. Some of that will have some ramifications of terms of jobs and those things, but then a lot of new jobs are coming. Considering it's a security meet today, I would say that area is going to simply explode when it comes to as it takes on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Malhotra, for sharing your knowledge and experience. Our next speaker of the session is Mr. Sahir Hidayatullah. May I request him to come on stage and please address the audience. Mr. Sahir, CEO Smokescreen, to enlighten us on adversarial thinking.
Hi, everyone. Okay. So it's 3 in the morning, back in 2002. I'm running point on a red team exercise for a large bank. And we've just broken into the network. We're sitting there on one of their systems. And one of my guys, one of my other pen testers says, hey, check this out, this is really cool. And back then, I don't know how many of you are on the red team pen testing side here? Show of hands. Not so many, okay. So there was a tool that had been released back then. It's called Metasploit. Many of you may have heard of it now. And it basically had a new function called auto-pwn. Pwn being the term that hackers use for taking control of your system. And auto-pwn did something really cool. I'm an old school hacker. I've been breaking into systems since I was 16 years old. I still look like I'm 16. I'm not. I'm blessed with good genes. But essentially, with one button, this program would go out on the network, scan everything, and it would find all the vulnerabilities and exploit them automatically. This was great. This is the first time I found the power of the machine in cybersecurity. I thought the pen tester would be obsolete a few years later. That obviously didn't happen. Now, why am I telling you this story? I'm CEO of a company that deals with everything from predictive analytics, machine learning, natural language processing, the works. I'm not going to talk about any of those things. I'm going to talk to you about a part of security that I believe will never be replaced, which is the human element and the mindset of security. And I'm going to try and be slightly adversarial by saying controversial things in order to start arguments with you. And what I'm going to try and talk about is the one single thing you can do, which will fundamentally improve your security. And you can do it without spending a single rupee dollar. Sounds interesting, right? Well, obviously there's a catch, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'll try to keep it interactive. I know we've got a wide audience, but I like to get conversation going. And if we don't get a conversation going, I'll fall back to audience participation, which means, gentleman in the blue shirt, let's have a question and answer session, right? So let's start by playing a game. Imagine there's a pot of gold, and you're a hacker that wants access to it. Or you're not a hacker, you just want access to this pot of gold. That's you in the bottom corner. Now, the people who own this pot of gold are not stupid. They've put in place all these walls. They've got a whole lot of monitoring as well. So, you can't just walk by and pick it up. And they've even got an armed guard who sits there 24/7. Sounds a bit like cybersecurity, right? You've got monitoring, you've got firewalls, right? Now, how would you get to this pot of gold? The puzzle solvers in the room have already found a way. Okay, so I promise you there is a route, right? And deal with the fact that there is no other way. Trust me, I sat and looked at it, okay? That's the route that you would take to get to that pot of gold, right? Pretty simple? Well, what you just did is apply what's called adversarial thinking. You're applying the way the hacker thinks about your network, and it's really crucial that you get this, and I'll try to explain why. Because what you just did was you looked at what was in place, and you worked around it. You didn't have a set plan. That guy had something set, and you reacted, and you went around it, right? So why does that matter? How many people here are responsible for defending networks? A few more hands than the red team side, right? So if you're a defender, you probably think in lists. What I mean by lists are these. You think, I need this technology, I need that technology, I need this process, I need this capability, right? You think in terms of lists. And every year you get a new budget to check off more things on your list. Here's the problem. The hacker thinks in graphs. What I mean by that is he looks at the list that you have in place. It's easy enough to figure out what you have. And he finds a way around the list of things you've done. Just like you did on the previous slide with the game. You saw what they had, you saw where the monitoring was, you found a way around it, right? This is crucial. In fact, this concept was extended by the Microsoft security guys. I forget the name of the guy, he's a luminary, and he kind of broke this down more in terms of how defenders need to think in graphs, not in terms of lists. Because once you see this, you'll never be able to get it out of your head, because till the day you stop thinking in lists, you will always lose to the guy who thinks in terms of graphs. Because you have a checklist, you set the chessboard once, he sees what you have, and he works around it, right? That's the problem. So these differences in terms of the way the hacker thinks and the way the guys who just raise their hands, the guys who defend networks think, is so fundamental that it's represented in primary colors. The blue team, the good guys. The red team, the guys who break into the network. We literally call these two separate teams in cybersecurity two totally different things. And they're both ostensibly supposed to do the same thing, which is protect the network, right? But these people are so different. Even in your organization, you'll realize the guys who do the pen tests, finish, throw down a report, put on their sunglasses, and ride off into the sunset. And the guy who's left with the operations security has to sit there and patch everything, right? A lot of people smiling, been through this, yeah? So these differences in the teams are even represented in differences of the language. You'll typically hear somebody on the defense side talk about stuff like this: patching, SQL injection, ransomware, right? These are the words we use. Heads up, this is elementary school vocabulary when you talk about defending your network against an attacker. The modern attacker talks about stuff like this: ASAP roasting, Kerber roasting, LLMNR poisoning, OLE embedded phishing, Squibbly-Doo. I promise you, it's a real attack. Look it up, right? How many people here know what Squibbly-Doo is? So what if I told you Squibbly-Doo is the fastest and easiest way for me as an attacker to break into your network? And nothing that you've done up to date is going to stop it. So until you're able to combine the language of the red team and the knowledge of the blue team, you will lose. I'll bet against it. Because if you go to MITRE, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this resource, they have this wonderful ATT and CK matrix, which lists all the techniques that a hacker can use. And there are, by my count, about 130 techniques that you need to understand. And even a career pen tester probably doesn't understand all of them. So how are you actually going to solve this problem? This becomes an intractable problem when you start thinking about it. Well, the good news is adversarial thinking, that thing I said can change the way you deal with security, solves this problem for you. It's not a technology, it's not a product, it's not a process, it's a way of thinking. And if you can start, here's the catch, if you can start to think this way, you will change the way you deal with your security. You'll spend less on security, you'll do better, you'll stop breaches before they come up, and you'll get great security budgets, I guarantee you, right? So what exactly is this mythical adversarial thinking? What does it let you do? So what it lets you do is break what's called the attacker's OODA loop. At Smokescreen, we're very fond of studying traditional military history and applying it to cybersecurity. Why? Because every possible problem that was there in conflict has been dealt with by the military, right? Everyone from Chanakya to Genghis Khan to the generals of today have studied this. So General John Boyd, a US Air Force colonel, came up with the concept of the OODA loop. The OODA loop, basically, he came up with it for dogfights. He said the guy who wins in the dogfight is the one who can observe what the other guy is doing, orient himself to that, decide his course of attack, and then finally act. Observe, orient, decide, act faster than the other guy. The OODA loop is now applied to everything from management consulting to, well, cybersecurity, but it's crucial because what adversarial thinking lets you do is work through the attacker's OODA loop and move faster than him. You can observe, understand what he's going to do, orient yourself faster than him, decide how you're going to counter him, and act before him, which means when WannaCry comes out, you don't have a problem. Everything you do in cybersecurity today is reactive. It's like airport security. I tell this analogy quite often. If you fly as much as me, you'll appreciate it. In airport security, post 9/11, you had to go through the not the baggage scanner, the scanner, body scanner. After that, somebody tried to carry a bomb in his shoe, so you had to take off your shoes. Then somebody tried to carry a bomb in his belt, you had to take off your belt. And then I don't know if you remember, there was a guy out of Africa who tried to carry a bomb in his underwear. And I decided I was going to stop flying, right? But this is exactly what you do in cybersecurity. Oh my God, look at what happened yesterday. Why? Because the attacker's executing the OODA loop faster than you, right? So what exactly is adversarial thinking? We try to devolve this to a simple, repeatable formula. It's a sum total of 4 things that you need to learn how to do. The first is red teaming. The second is deception. The third is threat hunting. And the fourth is incident response. These are the 4 things that you cannot do, and these are probably things some of you are thinking of doing. You can't do any of these 4 unless you know how to think like the hacker, right? So some of you probably have started doing red teaming, penetration testing. Deception is something new and upcoming. Threat hunting is going out and looking for the attacker. And incident response, well, stopping yourself getting on the 9 o'clock news, right? So I want to go back to the game very quickly and talk about level 2, which is threat hunting, to explain why it's different. And you've played version 1 of the game, so you can think about it. In threat hunting, the guy who was static up there can now pop up randomly at different places and look for you. And when he finds you, or he thinks he finds your footprints, he can illuminate the rest of the network. So if I tell you to play version 2 of this game, you can immediately see that it's going to be much harder than version 1. Version 1 was simple. You thought adversarially, you walked around him, right? Version 2, not so easy with threat hunting, right? There's another level which is interesting, which is deception. So what does the deception level look like? Well, there's multiple pots of gold, but only one of them is real. The rest of them have a motion sensor in them. So what's your first move? Anybody have a move which they want to take? Which pot of gold are you going for? Maybe that one? Okay, well, I'll make it easier for you, since some people are looking confused. I'll get rid of the guards and the cameras. You know what? I'll even get rid of the walls. What's your move? You don't have one, right? What if I even tell you that that's actually the real one? So you got it wrong, okay? Even if I tell you that's the one, notice, and I've checked, there are at least 2 fake versions you've got to go past before you reach the real one. You can understand why this game was so much harder to play than level 1, right? So these are new ways of thinking about defending your environment. No machine can do this for you. And when you do these, you mess with the attacker significantly. So I don't have much time left, so I'll tell you why this is all important. I'm quite fond of cats. The cat picture is just for fun. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, can I run through first and then we take them? Because I'm very short on time. There's a big blinking clock at me right now, okay? Yeah. So we actually had a pen tester friend of mine deal with a network which had both threat hunting and deception in it. He came back and he said exactly this, right? But I'll quickly run through some stuff that is probably counterintuitive. These are 10 things adversaries don't want you to know. And I'll go through them quickly, and we can then run through a conversation later if time permits. So 1, malware. If you're focusing on malware, you're doing it wrong. The modern attacker doesn't care about malware. So your malware strategy is pretty much useless. The second, command and control. If you are checking for blacklisted sites, domains which have been used in the past, the modern attacker doesn't use what you already know about. He uses new stuff. Useless. Third, PowerShell is the most crucial thing on your network for you to monitor. Every attacker uses it in place of malware. So if you don't know what's using PowerShell on your network, you're going to get hacked. Active Directory is more important than your patching. In the last 5 years of pen testing, have not gone after a system with a misplaced patch or missing patch. But your Active Directory being messed up, giving me access to things I shouldn't, every single time. So imagine if I tell you, stop patching your systems. Look at your AD schema instead. Reconnaissance. The attacker doesn't know where stuff is. Pretend, and he will believe you. Don't tell him, don't name your Swift server, right? Name it something else. Threat intelligence. The number of items in your threat intel feed, the number of IP addresses, hashes, domains, the larger it is, the less valuable that feed is. Literally. The smaller the feed, the more vital, the more useful information it is. So you need to start thinking about whether you're just blocking 50,000 Chinese IPs because they're from China, or you're blocking 5 IPs that matter to your industry. Your password policy is completely pointless when your people leave unencrypted credentials everywhere, and they're lying in the memory of every single endpoint in your network. This is the case every time before Windows reboots, the credentials are in clear text, unless you make some configuration changes. Two-factor authentication, if you use soft tokens and it's sitting on a system I own, it's utterly useless, because I can run that soft token application and generate the code. So two-factor auth, you may think it's great, doesn't work if you've got a soft token against the modern attacker. Biometrics, most people love this. As a hacker, I love biometrics. It's a password you can never change. Think about it. Yeah? So when you say you secure something with biometrics, I'm like, excellent. That's great news for me. You'll never get to change that one. Machine learning, I'm an ML guy, but it'll just give you more false positives than you know what to do with. I promise you. Sorry, I know there are a lot of ML guys here. I'm poisoning the well for everybody. And the last, because I like to rip on SIM, the SIM and your correlation rules are less likely to catch anything in your network than an alert user. Sorry, it's the truth. And I'm happy to argue this point later, right? So these are just some of the things that I thought would open your mind to how the modern hacker thinks. And you can't do any of this with the machine. This is an element of security which is human-driven. So summing up, think in graphs, not lists. Look at who knows offensive security best. Chances are they'll do better for your security. Your defense has to know what squibbly do is. The attacker's OODA loop, you have to execute faster than him. Adversarial thinking, which is what we're trying to call this, is red teaming, deception, threat hunting, incident response. Threat hunting reduces the time he can sit in the network without being found. And deception helps basically break his OODA loop, right? So I'm sure it's pretty clear now through the 2 games that we played. And finally, my summation, that adversarial thinking is the single greatest change you can make to your network, greater than any product, greater than any technology, greater than anything else you do. If you can implement this, you will beat the modern attacker. Thank you. That's all I've got. Happy to take questions if I have time. So 5 minutes. This thing is really scary. You guys should see it. Yeah.
It's a hackers like group, right? It's not individual. So if you go back to your game, level 2,
cat doesn't
Yep.
want to move.
The next.
Okay. This is the part where you start hating animations. Kush, could you move forward for me? Just hold down shift and it'll skip the animations.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
threat
now,
hunting. Yeah.
in this game, we are showing like one hacker, maybe, or multiple ways to protect it, right? Nowadays, it's like a group. So now, all the 10 things that we discussed, right? The group is exploiting all 10 together. Then this guy having gun plus all other things is not enough. So
The point is slightly
so when
different.
we say
I've understood
cognitive,
your
right?
point.
So if I apply cognitive from the hacker side, then what is cognitive from the protection side? That's my question.
Okay, so there's a concept in machine learning now called adversarial machine learning. Most people don't know about this area. It's very interesting. Machine learning algorithms take inputs and they come up with an output. Now, what if I told you that I can generate inputs to your ML system to fool it? So adversarial machine learning is attacks against the machine learning algorithm itself, which means the modern smart attacker, if he knows you have ML protecting your network, is going to feed misinformed data. Ultimately, it's a statistical model under the hood to allow that model to move and flow in the direction he wants, right? This is why I'm not a huge fan about ML for threat detection. You need a human being, and you need the machine to help surface things of interest to the human being. But I take your point. I mean, I couldn't put 20 guys on the slide because I'm really lazy with animations. But yeah, I mean, at scale, you need...
protect in that direction.
Yeah, so what you need is the same thing, the human being,
Yep.
the adversarial thinking, plus the machine and the machine learning and the analytics to surface things, to find patterns. Human beings are very good at finding patterns. Machines are very good at finding patterns at scale. So what you need the ML for is for that piece. You got someone there?
Hello, in the top 10 80 pieces, can you just explain the last piece which talks about the SIM one?
Yeah. So what does a SIM do? Event correlation, right? What is a SIM sold as? Detect hackers in your network. I've done IR for about 10, 12 years now. I have never once, not once, seen a SIM be the source of the initial alert for an attack being caught. The SIM is beautiful, excellent at forensics and post-mortem. That's what it's made for. When you have something to flesh out context, beautiful. To find that one thing among 4,000 alerts, useless. So the point is basically, there's one more point, is basically an alert user is more likely to be the source of detection of something bad in your network. My system is running slow, okay? Is more likely to be the source of something happening than somebody finding something in a correlation rule. Why? Because by the time you've written a correlation rule is something known bad, which means you have written a rule to find something you know already is bad, right? The attacker knows that you know this, so he's not going to do anything to trigger that correlation rule. I'll give simple examples probably after this around password guessing. I'll give you a couple of examples. I'm trying to take as many questions as possible. Anyone else? Somebody down there. So we can carry this conversation outside as long as the SIM guys don't catch me and shank me in the halls. So.
Just a basic understanding. So the reception, what we have talked about, is there a way advanced or anything different from the honeypots, what we used to have the earlier days?
So disclaimer, I provide deception solutions. But yes, deception is honeypots on steroids. It allows you to create honeypots at scale, not just fake systems, fake credentials, fake passwords, fake people, so that when the hacker's in the network, like those pots of gold which we saw, 10 pots of gold, there'll just be thousands of pots of gold. He has to find the right one. He doesn't know where it is. So what you've done is you've messed with his OODA loop. He can't think in terms of graphs because he doesn't know where to go. So yes, absolutely. Honeypots and deception is coming up. It's now a top 10 security technology according to Gartner, because it's something that deals with the modern attacker.
Thank you.
Nobody else? Great. Oh, one more. The hungry people in the room are giving you dirty looks, my friend.
Hi, my name is Lohit. I'm from CISA. You have not included something from ATP combined with machine learning, which is coming up and offered as a service in today's world for enterprise grade. So one of major enterprises which are implementing this in real time, combined with machine learning. In to analyze threats without, for example, ransomwares were analyzed in real time. So what do you think, is that a better technology combined with what your analysis is?
I think the point I'm trying to make is not that specific technologies are good or bad. In security, there's no such thing as throwing more stuff at the problem is a bad thing, right? But when you start thinking about limited budgets, limited resources, I think what's more crucial, rather than implementing new technology, is to fundamentally think about how you're protecting your environment. Stuff like ML, for example, can be extremely useful. Your SIM can be extremely useful. Even your old IDS can be extremely useful. But none of it is really going to be that useful unless you know how to think like the human being behind the keyboard. That is what I'm trying to say. The modern defender, anybody in this room, any CISO, if you're thinking of implementing an ML solution, you have no right to implement it if you don't know what support vector machines are, linear regression, and Jared-Winkler clustering. Okay? And I made the third one up. It's not real, as far as I know. Okay? Why? Because you're plugging a black box into your network, giving it some inputs, and saying some magic will happen, it'll protect my network. It's not going to happen. It just won't. Yeah.
What about gateway security? So like while entering the network, at that place we have put some security devices. Will that help?
That's a very good question. So is perimeter security a good thing to do? Yes, it's a good thing to do. However, the modern attacker, 90% plus of the attacks in the last few years have used spear phishing. They haven't hammered through your firewall. They haven't gone through your sandbox. They've sent a spear phishing email to somebody in your organization with a link to a completely legit domain, and they just have a password page, and the guy types in his password, thinking it's to log him in somewhere, and then he uses that, logs in on the VPN, and gains access to your environment, right? So perimeter security is definitely good to have, but I think internal visibility is even more important to have.
But for services that we are running, like web server, mail server, or any other service, there are no users there whom you can target for that phishing attack. So in that case, I think.
So think like a hacker. Think like a hacker. If this is your castle, your data center, your DMZ, and your highly protected application with a web application firewall in front of it, DDoS monitoring, am I going to attack there? Or am I going to attack from your branch network in a third-tier town where there's a user sitting there, and once I land up on that network, I know that I can move laterally through that network towards that server, which is easier. Again, in the last few years, I don't remember anyone who targeted directly. There have been very few breaches, if you really think about it, of note, which revolved around an attack that started from either an application layer attack or something directly to an exposed port, because attackers know that you've invested in perimeter security. Cisco and Checkpoint have done a great job. So why attack there? Attack the weakest link.
So it means if we physically segregate those networks with the user network, and someone has to manually go and fix things, then it is fine.
Yes, so absolutely. If you can segregate those networks well, you win. All problems in cybersecurity can be solved by network isolation and cryptography. The hard part is the details of doing it.
Thank you.
How difficult is to make deception? How do you make a money back which looks exactly like a digital back?
Good question. So that's what deception platforms try to do. They try to, like the original honeypot is not very realistic. Deception platforms are very realistic, right? So there are guys who basically work on this problem. So we have a system called Mirage Maker, which generates information that looks real automatically. But what's really crucial with deception is it's not just a box you can plug in. If you take my box, plug it in, it'll be useless in 6 months. What you need is the strategy. What you need is the thinking of where to place those particular pots of gold, what those pots of gold should look like. The pots of gold for this gentleman's organization and yours have to look different because you're different companies, right? So there is an element of strategy and planning and process in deception. And then there's technology to make it easy to make stuff look real at scale. That's where the new technology comes in. Of course, absolutely. There's no silver bullet in security. Can deception be evaded? 100%, yes. But is it hard to evade? Is it a very good step up in capability? Absolutely, yes. Okay, I think they're going to throw me off stage. I'm going to run this way. Thank you, everyone. We can talk outside.
Thank you, Sahir. That was indeed a very interesting session.